This is The Arm of the Starfish by Madeleine, Chapter 23. Was it only that the light bulb in Father Enriquez's tiny office was dim, like the light bulb in the Avenida Palace? Or was the darkness in Adam's mind? He sat on a straight chair across from Father Enriquez and Arganilo. Their faces were closed and emotionless, as though turned to stone. Adam did not know when Father Enriquez and Arganilo started to talk in low voices, nor when he realized they were speaking French, until he heard Father Enriquez ask, "Arganilo, how did you know?" "You think you could keep me away?" Arganilo asked. "When I am needed? You think I will hide in safety when you are in danger?" His voice deepened with emotion. "You think I cannot find out when you try to protect me?" Father Enriquez held up a thin white hand, and Arganilo rumbled into silence. A dark shadow moved across the doorway, and Canon Tallis came into the office. "The papers," he said without preamble, and, as Adam handed them to him, he demanded, "Why was Joshua here? He was to be at the Madeleine Tower." Adam stood up, but his knees were trembling so that he sat down again immediately. "He was here because of me." Then came the questions. Canon Tallis, clear, precise, ice-cold. Father Enriquez, gentle, but nevertheless touching every raw and open nerve. It had been again and again and again. Would it ever end? The unexpected, the unforeseen that had happened. The papers Adam had delivered to Professor Embuste at Dr. Ball's rectory had indicated a meeting at the Madeleine Tower. Joshua, working with Interpol and the Lisbon police, was to have been there. Typhon Cutter was to have been led into his own spiderweb. As indeed he was, Father Enriquez said, but not in the way we thought. And not before Malek's bullet had found Joshua. Adam cried in anguish. "I killed Joshua. I believed Callie, and I didn't tell Dr. O'Keefe." He began to gasp through sobs that racked his body. "I let Callie get Joshua's phone numbers, and he came to save me." Canon Tallis cut him short. "Stop." "But he would still be alive." The canon's voice was quiet, firm as a rock. "You cannot see past the past that did not happen, any more than you can foresee the future. Come, Adam. We must go." In the back seat of a police car, Adam rode beside Canon Tallis. Two policemen sat in front, talking casually. The last late light of evening had left the sky, so time must have passed, and light from street lamps, shop windows, neon signs streamed across the mosaic sidewalks. A mule-drawn wagon turned into the street in front of them, a lumbering, cumbersome wagon bearing great red clay jars of wine. The mule ambled along, paying no attention to the honking of the police car. The driver shouted threats at the mule driver, and finally managed to swerve around wagon and mule, almost knocking down an elderly man in a tam o' shanter who was riding along on a bicycle. The man wobbled precariously, shrieking at the police car and shaking his fist. The policeman leaned out of the window and yelled back, zigzagging toward the curb to more shouting from excited pedestrians. Beside Adam, the canon sat still and stern, paying no attention. The driver regained control of the car and himself and turned down a side street, then down another and darker street, where laundry flapped, ghost-like in the breeze from the Tagus. The car stopped and the canon got out, beckoning to Adam, crossed to a narrow house faced with blue and white tile, and banged on a brass knocker against a blue door. Above them, a window was flung open, and a man with a long white beard and a nightcap stuck his head out. "AH 173176, the canon said. "EH 269, the man in the nightcap replied. And then Canon Tallis says some things in a foreign language. And the man says some things in a foreign language. The man with the beard replied and disappeared, pulling the window closed behind him. It had sounded like Greek to Adam. As a matter of fact, it probably was Greek. The door creaked open, and the man in the beard led them into a small side room containing only a high desk and a stool. The canon explained curtly, Father Matusis is the only one who can break Dr. O'Keefe's code. The patriarch sat on the stool, steel-rimmed glasses slipping down his nose. He wrote with a scratchy, sputtering nib, which he had continually dipped into ink. Adam did not know how long Canon Tallis and he stood there while the old man wrote, thought, wrote, scratched out, and wrote again. It must have been more than a few minutes. It was probably less than hours. Time had no meaning. It was not. Finally, Father Matusis handed the papers over. Joshua? He asked. Canon Tallis nodded. Tomorrow afternoon. Gaia? Yes. Adam no longer attempted to understand. He swayed. Canon Tallis gestured to him, and they left, climbing back into the police car, which was waiting outside. The American Embassy, the canon said, then dryly to Adam. We don't usually have this kind of escort. At the embassy, a party was in progress. Lights and music filled the night. Uniformed servants were passing trays of champagne, platters of canapes. The canon walked by the open archways that led into the rooms in which the party was being held. At one end of the large room to the right, an orchestra was playing, banked by palms. That they could play on the night of Joshua's death, that the world could still turn, the Tagus flow, seemed to Adam incredible. Come, Canon Tallis said. They went up a flight of wide marble stairs. Adam could feel himself climbing, but he could not see. He was blind with rage, and even the brilliant lighting of the room into which he was led could not clear his vision. The kaleidoscopic events of the past hours crackled around him. He stood obediently by Canon Tallis while the echoing shots in the Sao Juan Chrysostom monastery sounded in his ears. He knew that he was being introduced to the ambassador, and that he was being questioned kindly. He answered, but he did not hear what he said. In the bright room, the ambassador had to repeat a question. Adam replied, the question slowly filtering through. Oh, he was with the Singer's sewing machine company. I don't think he was one of ours. No, the ambassador said. One of ours. Polly? Adam said to the ambassador, but heard no answer to the name that was now a question. Charles cried, he said, but when the ambassador, with gentle patience, asked, What was that, Adam? The boy only shook his head, as though trying to clear it. Then he was able to answer the question he had already answered once for Canon Tallis and Father Enriquez. Through the open windows of the ambassador's bright room, the singing of summer insects came clearly, and it was as though their buzzing was in Adam's head. The ambassador was looking through the decoded papers. Later, Adam would remember that there had been a transatlantic call to Washington. There were other calls. Later, it would all sort itself out in Adam's memory, questions and answers finally settling like sediment in a test tube. Next to Canon Tallis's steel control, the ambassador seemed excitable, harried. But Adam realized later that although he was undoubtedly the second, he was not the first. But why did Arcangelo let Cutter and Callie go? Adam exploded once. Why did he let them leave the Sao Juan Chrysostom? The police and Interpol were both there. If you remember, they were already at the Madeleine Tower. But how? The canon silenced Adam with a stern glance. When your young taxi driver friend left you and Joshua at the Sao Juan, he went, as Arcangelo had directed him, to Belém. But what about Cutter and Callie now? Where are they? Free, Canon Tallis said, in a matter of speaking. But the ambassador sighed. You are not at home, Adam. Trying someone like Typhoon Cutter in a Portuguese court is difficult, if not impossible. You mean he can buy his way out? Now the ambassador's voice was hard. You think our courts are entirely free from corruption? Of course, Cutter would be able to buy and subvert at least part of the testimony against him. But this is nearsighted oversimplification. Even in America, it's difficult to arrest someone on suspicion of intent to commit murder. You have to have real and absolute evidence. But Molek is being tried for murder and will be found guilty. The beast caught in his master's trap. One can't help being sorry for him. Again, that's evading the issue. He is, in a way, our scapegoat too. Remember that the Portuguese are not interested in the moral and ethical qualities of expatriates, especially people whose extremely lucrative businesses bring employment and money where it is rather desperately needed. This is worth thinking about. But Adam was not capable of thought. The ambassador continued, or was it before, when words floated to Adam's mind with no consecutivity. Has it occurred to you, Adam, that we don't want to air Dr. O'Keefe's experiments in court? The need for silence has not been removed. Has it occurred to you that both the Portuguese and the United States governments would wish to avoid the appearance of an international incident which Cutter would not hesitate to exploit? Something like this, allowed to snowball, could start a holocaust. Is this what Joshua would have wanted? But the ambassador banged down onto his desk a coffee cup Adam hadn't even realized he was holding, so that the dark liquid slopped into the saucer. We are not going to try to do more than we know we can do. If this seems to you an adequate expediency, try to remember that one battle won today permits us to embark on the next, and then a next, and all the long ones that are to follow. He rose. Was it then or later? In any case, the blinded time in the bright office was finally over, and Adam followed the dark, erect form of the canon down the stairs. They left the light and music of the embassy and climbed into the police car. I'll take you back to Gaia, Canon Tallis said. Adam nodded. We'll take Joshua's plane. I'm not the pilot he was, but I'll get us there. And Cutter? Adam repeated thickly. How much were you able to listen to? There was no censure in the question. He's been given a week to leave Portugal. He'll lose his property here and all the money he has tied up in it. His Portuguese operation is over. Adam clenched his fists. That's not, he started savagely. No revenge is, Adam. At the little airport, Arcangelo was waiting. He held out the heavy jackets, the goggles, helped them strap in. Then he looked in silent questioning at Canon Tallis, who said, Father Enriquez is bringing Joshua tomorrow. Come with him. He held out one of the pilot's seats and reached for Arcangelo's hand. Thank you, Arcangelo. Thank God for you. Arcangelo shrugged, smiled briefly, went to the propeller. The plane shuddered into life, moved slowly along the runway, jerked, and left the ground. Once again, time was outside Adam, or perhaps it was Adam who was outside of time. He sat in the cockpit of the same small plane where Joshua, in the pilot's seat, had sung the Ode to Joy as they bucked wildly through the boisterous clouds. Now, Canon Tallis sat darkly at the controls, closed in, stern. Above them and around them, the stars were thick. Below was a sea of white clouds. He's flying this crate much too high, Adam thought fleetingly. It didn't matter. They would, or they would not, get to the island, and whichever one it was didn't matter either. The plane jerked and dropped. Canon Tallis grimly pulled on the stick, and the plane steadied and nosed upward again. Why didn't you kill Molek? Adam shouted suddenly. He strained for the answer. Would that have brought Joshua back? With the taste of ashes in his mouth, Adam realized that his grief was nothing beside the cannon's. He slouched down in his seat as though to avoid the piercing light of the stars. Behind them, the moon, just beyond fullness, sailed lopsided and serene. Through the rift in the clouds, it made a path upon the water below. And all Adam wanted to do was swear to split the pure and silver air with every blasphemy he had ever learned on the streets. He shuddered, controlled himself, shuddered again. He bellowed, the words coming out like oaths. She has my passport. Callie? Yes. All right, we'll get it. I don't want it, Adam cried. I don't want anything. To this, the cannon did not reply. He seemed to be concentrating only on the plain, the stars above, and the clouds below. They moved through space. They must have moved through time. The clouds were gone, and below them lay the vast, slowly breathing surface of the sea. Ahead was the dark shadow of the island. The plane nosed downward, and suddenly, along the beach, flares were lit, one after another, outlining a runway for the landing. Dr. O'Keefe was there with Jose, Maria's husband. 4 horses were hitched to the barnacled pile. Canon Tallis climbed stiffly from the plane. Adam unstrapped himself and followed. Beyond the barest greeting, there was no talking. Dr. O'Keefe and Canon Tallis rode ahead, Adam and Jose behind. Jose spoke no English, but once he looked over and at Adam and said softly, Joshua, and Adam could see that tears were trickling quietly down his cheeks. Looking at Jose's tears, Adam fought down a reaction to shout, Shut up! He bowed his head and let the horse carry him along the water's edge, and the drumming of the hoofbeats muffled in the sand. The horses moved with unhurried pace, taking them inexorably through time, through space. In the bungalows, lights were on in the living quarters. Make Polly be in bed, Adam thought savagely. I cannot see her. I cannot see Charles. They dismounted. The horses followed Jose, and Adam followed Dr. O'Keefe and Canon Tallis. Only Mrs. O'Keefe was in the living room, and she drew Adam to her in a quick, maternal embrace. Adam felt an enormous sob rising within him, and pulled from the circle of her arms. She held him not with her arms, but with her eyes. You must not blame yourself. It started with the door at the Avenida Palace, Adam said. If I hadn't opened the door. The cannon cut brusquely across his words. Or the fog in New York, or if I had not asked you to take Polly back to Lisbon. This is foolish talk and it must be stopped. But he died for me, Adam choked. I gave Callie his phone numbers, and he pushed me into one of the monk's cells, and Molech's bullet hit him. He died for us all, the canon said, and if you love him, you will have to stop talking and thinking like this, because what you have to do now is live, for him and for us all. Mrs. O'Keefe moved to the arch that led to the living quarters. And what you have to do at this particular moment is to go to bed. There will be work tomorrow. Work? What work? Adam thought numbly, but he bowed a clumsy good night and went to bed.